My family humiliated me at every reunion, until they learned I owned the hotel. Their arrogant smiles vanished when they realized the failure they mocked was the real owner. Justice never looked so sweet. Every family reunion felt like walking into an arena where I was the weakest fighter. My mother's eyes scanned me from head to toe, always stopping just long enough on my cheap shoes to make everyone notice. My sister Lucia arrived with her husband Roberto, both of them glowing with the kind of smugness that comes from being the favorites. The hugs, the applause, the admiration, all directed at them. Me? I was the afterthought. The invisible one. That year, the reunion was held at Hotel Miramar, a place with marble floors, chandeliers, and ocean views so stunning it felt unreal. To everyone else, it was just another luxury retreat. But to me, it was more than that. The Miramar wasn't just a hotel. It was mine. My inheritance. A secret my grandfather had left me 6 months earlier without telling the rest of the family. I arrived quietly, watching the way my cousins rolled their eyes at my simple dress, how Roberto whispered something about graphic designers not making much money, and earned a round of laughter. I smiled politely, though inside I was burning. When the room keys were handed out, my sister got the presidential suite, my parents an executive room, my cousins deluxe suites. And me? Room 108, next to the laundry, the smallest and noisiest corner of the hotel. Everyone chuckled, some openly, some behind their hands. My mother even said, "Carmen is simple. She doesn't need luxuries." If only they knew the truth. If only they realized every insult they threw at me was echoing inside walls I owned. And yet, I said nothing. Because I had come here not just to endure, but to finally understand why my family had always seen me as less. That first night at the welcome dinner, I sat at the far end of the table, my chair half hidden behind a column. The waiters moved gracefully between the tables, serving wine and placing silver domes in front of my relatives. My sister received lobster, my parents ordered steak, Roberto toasted with expensive champagne. When it was my turn, I asked for a simple salad. My father smirked and leaned back in his chair. "Can't you afford something better, Carmen? We can cover your plate if you want." Laughter rippled through the table. My cheeks burned, but I forced a calm smile. "The salad is perfect. Thank you." The conversation, as always, turned to Lucia, her promotion at the bank, her new house in the exclusive neighborhood, her brilliant children. "Our Lucia always knew what she wanted," my mother said proudly, her voice carrying across the dining hall. "Not like Carmen, wasting her life with this, drawing business." I kept my head high, though my chest ached. And then, the head chef appeared. A tall man in immaculate white, walking straight to our table. He stopped, bowed slightly, and addressed me with warmth. "Was the salad to your liking, Miss Carmen?" The table went silent. My family stared, confused. "Yes, Antonio. It was delicious. Thank you," I replied softly. Lucia blinked. "You know the chef?" I smiled vaguely. "We've crossed paths before." The truth was, I had personally hired Antonio 3 months earlier. My family had no idea, but every detail of that dinner, the wine they sipped, the food they devoured, was a decision signed off by me. And for the first time that night, I felt something shift inside me. A reminder that humiliation had an expiration date. After dinner, I slipped away to the lobby, pretending I needed some fresh air. The truth was, I needed distance from their mocking smiles. I sat on one of the velvet chairs, staring at the glittering chandelier above me, when Miguel, the hotel manager, approached quietly with a cup of tea. "Miss Carmen," he said softly, making sure no one could hear. "I don't know how much longer I can watch this. You're the owner of this hotel. You shouldn't let them treat you like this." His words struck me harder than I expected. He was right. Every insult, every cruel laugh, was happening under my roof. I know, Miguel, I sighed, wrapping my hands around the warm porcelain. But I need to understand something first. Why do they despise me so much? Why after 30 years am I still the least valuable one at the table? He frowned, then lowered his voice even more. Your grandfather believed in you. He knew you could carry this legacy. He always said you had more strength than the rest combined. My chest tightened at the memory of my grandfather. The only person who had ever looked at me and seen potential instead of weakness. As Miguel walked away, I stayed in the empty lobby, listening to the echo of distant laughter from the banquet hall. For a moment, I wondered if keeping the secret was a mistake. Perhaps they needed to know. But when I pictured their shocked faces, I realized I wasn't ready. Not yet. I wanted the truth to come out at the right time, when every cruel word they'd thrown at me would collapse back onto them like a broken mirror. And that time was coming sooner than they thought. The next morning, the family gathered for the breakfast buffet. The spread was magnificent: exotic fruits, golden croissants, smoked salmon, freshly squeezed juices. Staff moved discreetly, greeting me with subtle nods they hoped my family wouldn't notice. Carmen, are you only eating that? My mother asked, eyeing my small plate of fruit and yogurt. That's why you look so thin. You're sickly. I'm perfectly healthy, Mom, I replied calmly. I just prefer something light. Before I could take another bite, Roberto laughed loudly. Light? You mean cheap? She probably counts every penny she spends. The table erupted in laughter. I sipped my juice slowly, refusing to give them the reaction they wanted. A few tables away, a couple of hotel guests whispered to each other, pointing discreetly in my direction. They knew. They had probably seen my photo on the staff board in the private office. Another reminder that I was the one holding all the power, even if my family remained blind. The morning passed with activities arranged by my parents: spa treatments, pool time, guided tours. Lucia and Roberto were pampered with massages and cocktails. When it came to me, my mother faked disappointment. Oh dear, looks like there's no spot left for the premium massage. You'll have to settle for the basic one. I nodded without protest, but later overheard that she had personally cancelled my booking. It would be wasted on Carmen, she had told the receptionist. My chest burned, but I swallowed the anger. They thought I was powerless, stuck in the shadows of their perfect little world. But what they didn't know was that shadows can stretch, until they cover everything. At lunch, the conversation shifted to a topic I'd hoped they'd avoid: my grandfather's inheritance. I'll never understand why Dad sold the hotel before dying, my mother said wistfully, cutting her steak. It was his greatest pride. He must have gotten an irresistible offer, my father replied, sipping his wine. Too bad we never found out who bought it. Lucia sighed dramatically. If the hotel were still ours, we'd be staying here for free instead of paying these ridiculous rates. Their words stung, not because they were cruel, but because of how casually they erased my grandfather's love for me, the only one who had ever believed I was capable. I traced the rim of my glass, watching the reflection of the chandelier flicker on the wine's surface. He probably knew what he was doing, I said quietly. Maybe he sold it to someone who valued it more than we ever did. My mother scoffed. Oh, please, Carmen. You wouldn't understand. This hotel is worth millions. Yes, I murmured. I know exactly what it's worth. Miguel passed by the table just then, giving me a discreet glance. He understood the irony better than anyone. After lunch, I excused myself and walked out to the terrace overlooking the ocean. The sun shimmered on the waves like molten gold. It was the same view my grandfather loved. I could almost hear his voice: "Don't fight for their approval, Carmen. Build your own world." And I had. The difference was, this time, my world was built on the ground they were standing on. And soon, they would realize it. That afternoon, the family gathered by the pool. Lucia lounged under a wide umbrella, wearing designer sunglasses and talking loudly so everyone could hear about her exclusive client trip to Madrid. My mother nodded proudly, as if Lucia had just solved world hunger. I sat quietly at a smaller table with a book I wasn't reading. My cousin Daniela approached, sipping her cocktail. "You know, Carmen," she said with a condescending smile, "you've always been different. Simple. Maybe that's your charm." I looked up, meeting her eyes. "Or maybe that's what you tell yourself to feel better." She blinked, surprised, then laughed awkwardly. "You've changed." "Maybe I finally stopped apologizing for existing," I replied and turned another page. She walked away, muttering something to Lucia, who shot me one of her famous pitying looks. By sunset, my father gathered everyone for the traditional family toast. He loved these moments, when he could pretend we were a picture-perfect family. Glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and I stood at the edge of the group, half cut out of every photo. After the toast, my mother turned to me. "Carmen, dear, could you ask the staff to clean up this area? It's getting messy." "The staff?" I bit back a smile. "Of course," I said sweetly, and within moments, 2 employees appeared, cleaning the tables with precision. "Thank you, miss," one of them said softly. "Everything will be ready for the next event." My mother frowned. "Miss?" "Just hotel manners," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. But inside, I could feel it building, the moment where everything would finally turn. The truth was simmering just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect spark. And I knew exactly when to strike. That evening, a formal dinner was held in the grand ballroom, candlelight, a string quartet, soft jazz humming under the chatter of expensive perfume and ego. My family arrived dressed to impress. Lucia wore a golden gown that caught every flicker of light, while my mother paraded her pearls like royalty. I wore a simple black dress, elegant, but not loud. I didn't need to compete. Not anymore. During the first course, my father began bragging about the family's legacy again. "Our name has always carried weight," he said, raising his glass. "Even if some of us took different paths." He didn't look at me, but he didn't have to. The jab landed exactly where he wanted. Roberto smirked. "Speaking of paths, Carmen, how's that little design thing you run? Still doing flyers for local shops?" The laughter that followed was sharp and cruel. I smiled thinly. "It's going well, actually. My clients seem happy." Lucia leaned forward, feigning sweetness. "Oh, come on, Carmen. You don't have to pretend. We know it's been hard for you." Miguel appeared just then, bowing politely. "Miss Carmen, would you like me to prepare the private dining room for your after-dinner meeting?" The table fell silent. My father blinked. "Meeting? With whom?" Miguel smiled. "With the board, sir. For tomorrow's investor brunch. The owner asked her to review the final details personally." Every eye turned to me. I could feel the confusion ripple through them like a sudden chill. "The owner?" my mother repeated. "What owner?" I looked at Miguel. He hesitated, unsure if he'd gone too far. But I simply nodded. "It's all right, Miguel. They'll find out soon enough." My father's expression shifted from arrogance to unease. And for the first time in years, I was the one watching them squirm. After dinner, I walked alone through the corridors of Hotel Miramar. The golden lights shimmered on the marble floors, and I could see my reflection, calm, steady, nothing like the trembling girl I used to be at these reunions. I stopped at the framed portrait of my grandfather that hung in the main hallway. He was smiling in that knowing way of his, eyes full of warmth. "You always saw me," I whispered. "Even when no one else did." Behind me, I heard footsteps. My father. "Carmen," he said, his voice sharp. What was that about earlier? The manager talking to you like you're someone important? I turned to face him. Because I am. He frowned, trying to laugh it off. Don't start with your dramatics. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. I didn't embarrass anyone, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. His jaw tightened. You've always been ungrateful. Do you know how hard we worked to keep this family's reputation intact? I stepped closer, meeting his cold stare. Reputation built on pretending, on comparing, on humiliating me every single year. But here's the truth you've ignored, Dad, this hotel, your beloved Miramar. I paused, watching his confusion twist into disbelief. Belongs to me. For a second, the only sound was the ocean crashing outside. He laughed nervously. Don't be ridiculous. You can ask Miguel, I said, my voice steady. Or you can check the ownership records. Grandfather sold it before he died, not to strangers, but to me. His face drained of color. That's impossible. No, I said softly. It's poetic. And I walked away, leaving him frozen beneath my grandfather's portrait, the same man who had once said I wasn't worth his last name. By the time I returned to the ballroom, word had already begun to spread. I could feel the shift in the air, whispers, sideways glances, confusion tangled with disbelief. My mother was sitting stiffly, her pearls slightly askew, whispering frantically to Lucia. My father stood beside her, pale and trembling with barely contained anger. When he saw me, he straightened his jacket and said through clenched teeth. What kind of joke is this, Carmen? I didn't answer immediately. I wanted them to feel that silence, the same silence they'd forced on me my entire life. It's not a joke, I finally said, calm and measured. This hotel is mine. Grandfather left it to me 6 months before he passed. You can check the legal documents if you'd like. Lucia laughed, sharp, nervous, trying to regain control. You? Owning this place? Carmen, please. Be serious. You couldn't even afford your own car last year. Because I was investing, I said simply. In this. Miguel stepped forward, holding a sealed folder, the one I had asked him to keep ready for this moment. All the ownership papers, transfer contracts, and tax records are in here, he said respectfully, placing it on the table in front of them. Miss Carmen is the rightful owner of Hotel Miramar. The room fell completely silent. Even the staff stopped moving. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of the waves crashing against the shore. My mother blinked several times, her voice shaking. You mean to tell me Ernesto sold our hotel to you? I smiled softly. He didn't sell it. He gifted it. He said it belonged to the only member of the family who truly understood its soul. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She looked at my father as if searching for an explanation he couldn't give. Lucia tried again, but her confidence was fading. Even if that's true, why didn't you tell us? Why humiliate us like this? I tilted my head. Humiliate you? You did that to yourselves. Year after year, you made me sit at the smallest table, stay in the worst room, eat the cheapest meal. You taught me how to survive humiliation. Tonight, I'm simply teaching you how it feels. Roberto muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care. I looked at each of them, one by one, the people who had treated me like I was invisible. Do you remember what you said last night, Dad? That our family name has always carried weight? I said quietly. Well, it still does. You're staying under it, under my roof, on my property, in my hotel. My father opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For once, the man who always had the last word had none. Miguel cleared his throat respectfully. Miss Carmen, would you like us to prepare the presidential suite for you? It's currently occupied, but we can relocate the guests. I looked straight at my sister. No, Miguel. Leave it as it is. I prefer my quiet little room by the laundry. It's symbolic. Lucia's cheeks turned crimson. I leaned slightly forward, lowering my voice. Enjoy the rest of your stay. Breakfast tomorrow is on me. Technically, it always was. And then I turned and walked away. As I left the ballroom, I could hear my mother's voice tremble behind me. Ernesto always said she was different, she whispered. I just never thought he meant better. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small walking away from them. I felt infinite, like every insult, every laugh, every cold glance had finally been repaid in full. I stepped out onto the terrace, where the night air smelled like salt and jasmine. The waves shimmered under the moonlight, the same way they had when I first inherited the hotel. Except now, I wasn't the forgotten daughter. I was the woman who owned the place where her pain began and ended. The next morning, sunlight flooded the terrace where the family usually gathered for breakfast. The sea glittered, peaceful and detached, as if mocking the chaos that had unraveled the night before. I arrived late, deliberately. The staff had already set a table for me apart from the others, white linens, fresh flowers, and a perfect view of the ocean. When I sat down, Miguel nodded respectfully. Everything is ready, Miss Carmen. Across the patio, my family was unusually quiet. No laughter, no bragging, just murmurs and stolen glances in my direction. Lucia looked exhausted, her flawless makeup unable to mask the sleepless night. My father pretended to read the newspaper, though his hands trembled slightly with every page he turned. My mother, ever the queen of appearances, finally stood and approached my table. Carmen, she said softly, forcing a smile, why didn't you tell us sooner? We would have understood. I set down my coffee cup and looked at her calmly. Would you? Or would you have treated me the same way, until you needed something? Her smile faltered. We're family, she whispered. I nodded. Exactly. And that's why I invited you all here, not to gloat, not for revenge, but to make you see what you've become. What we became. For the first time, she didn't have a reply. Her eyes drifted toward the horizon, blinking back tears she'd never allow to fall. A few minutes later, my father approached, his pride cracked open just enough for sincerity to slip through. Your grandfather was right, he said quietly. You did something none of us ever could. You built something real. I just protected what he built, I said. And maybe that's what he saw in me, someone who doesn't destroy out of envy. He hesitated, then extended his hand. We'd like to make things right. I looked at it for a long moment before shaking it. Then start by respecting people without needing to know their worth first. Lucia came over last, her golden perfection dimmed by guilt. I didn't mean to hurt you, Carmen. Yes, you did, I said gently. You just didn't think I'd ever matter enough for it to count. She lowered her eyes, and for the first time, there was no competition in her silence, just shame. I finished my breakfast slowly, letting the ocean breeze wash over me. It felt lighter than it ever had before. When they finally left the hotel that afternoon, they each said goodbye differently. My father with a firm nod. My mother with a hesitant hug. Lucia with tears that looked real for once. After the car disappeared down the road, I stood alone in the lobby. The marble floors gleamed beneath my feet, the sound of waves echoing softly through the open doors. Miguel approached. Are you all right, Miss Carmen? I smiled. I am, Miguel. For the first time, I really am. He nodded. Your grandfather would be proud. I turned toward the vast glass windows overlooking the sea. Maybe. But I think he'd be even prouder that I didn't just forgive them. I freed myself from needing their approval. Outside, the waves kept crashing, steady, timeless, and unapologetic. So was I.